Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sticking for this last talk in the session. I know I'm the thing or the talking between you and the happy hour. Let's make this happy 15 minutes as well. So today we're going to talk about online anonymous reputation systems. My name is Alejandro. I'm a PhD student at Carnegie Mellon University, and this is work that I did with my advisor, Nicolas, Christin. So let's just jump right ahead into it. Suppose you want to buy a product online, and let's say it's headphones. You open eBay, you search for headphones, and you encounter these two results. One user with some sales and no feedback, and another with 800,000 sales and 99.3% positive feedback. Which one will you choose? All else equal, you would likely choose the better rated vendor. The signals you saw before are called reputation signals. And they are ratings that users give other users, and they are abundant across online platforms. Their goal is to facilitate trust between buyers and sellers. These signals facilitate trust because present behavior carries future implications. If you do things that make people trust you in a marketplace, people can rate you positively. You get to display these ratings for future buyers, and those ratings in return make other people trust you again. On the other hand, if you commit fraud, for example, you will be marked accordingly, and people will distrust you, and hopefully interact less with you in the future. At least that's the theory. Reputation signals are everywhere, and they guide our decision-making in many areas, from what movies we choose to watch, to where we eat, or what job we decide to take. I'm not surprised if a few of you are already pulling Yelp to figure out where you're going to have dinner later tonight or where you're going to drink after. Reputation signals also feed into other systems in the platform. They are, for instance, picked up by recommendation systems that may prioritize or deprioritize users or listings based on their reputation. Another system that is affected by reputation are moderation systems. These systems may immediately ban or suspend a user based on the ratings they receive from other users. Or they may also flag a user for additional review by a human moderation team. So the key question is, since these systems have been around for a while, do they actually work? And the way we're measuring whether they work or not is across two goals. Does reputation predict who will be financially successful? And does reputation predict who will leave the market? In easier terms, if you have good reviews, will you make more money? And if you have bad reviews, will you make less money? Online anonymous markets, which are also known as dark web marketplaces, I hope some of you are aware of them, but hopefully not visited them too much, unless for research, of course. These are the markets that you access through Tor. And they're very similar to conventional marketplaces, as you can see here. You have on top eBay, on the bottom you have a vendor and nemesis market. They have signals like positive ratings, number of sales, number of reviews, etc. It turns out that these markets are a great place to study reputation. First, because we have the data and it's publicly accessible, and we have validated techniques to estimate sales in these markets. In our case, we have 8 individual markets from 2011 to 2023, and over 16,000 vendors. Second, there's very little algorithmic interference that would impact your experiments. 2 users may search for the same thing on Amazon and get different results based on a variety of other factors, unrelated to reputation. OAMs don't have this algorithmic interference, which allows for cleaner experiments. And third, there's a lot of external variables that are hard to control in traditional markets. It's hard to isolate the reputation of a vendor on eBay, given that they might have reputation in other platforms or a large social media presence. This is easier to control in OEMs because there's not a lot of places where they can be rated. We're not leaving Google or Facebook reviews on our fentanyl vendor. These are online anonymous marketplaces. Reputation is extremely important, if I haven't emphasized enough in these marketplaces, because you're not just buying headphones. Again, you're buying things like heroin and fentanyl, and so a bad vendor could really harm you. So trust is really essential, and you're not also interacting with the most reputable members of society, so fraud and scams are very common And so reputation is, once again, super important. And these are great places to study reputation. So to conduct this study, we focus on 3 categories of features which are common across all the markets in our data set. First, of course, are reputation features, which are signals that depend on ratings given by other people, as you can see on the screen. We also have revenue features, which include any features that account for the sales of a vendor. And third, we have listing features, which are any features that are derived from item listings and describe the items sold by a vendor. This could be things like where you're based off, account for the price of the item, and the category of the good, and so on and so forth. So, does reputation predict financial success? To evaluate whether it can predict financial success, we first grab all the vendors from a market. Great. Then we split the market's data into weeks. And at each week, we train a decision tree model on the features that we described earlier. And our prediction target is the wealth quartile. These wealth quartiles are created by computing the revenue each vendor has at the end of the market and creating 4 even bins, or quartiles. We do this for each week of the market. Week 1, we train, we predict, we evaluate. Week 2, so on and so forth. So as we go through the market, the great news is that we can predict the revenue with pretty good accuracy. Halfway through a market, we can predict which vendors will be financially successful at the end of the market with about 75% accuracy. That means that if your market lasted for 4 years, 2 years in, you can tell who's going to be where at the end of the market. And we did this with very simple random forest classifiers, no optimizations, nothing fancy. And so you can really think of this as a lower bound. On top of that, we demonstrate in the paper that we can train on older markets or different markets and predict on different markets, and this still holds, which demonstrates that the method generalizes across markets. So these are good news. The bad news is that if you remove reputation features, as I showed you earlier, if you take those out, it has very little impact on the classifier. Reputation doesn't really matter on its own. So this, in a sense, paints a grim picture for reputation alone, at least. But you will need to read the paper to figure out what are the good ways in which reputation still helps our classifier. Now let's go to whether it predicts financial failure or not. We do the same thing. We grab all the vendors, we follow the same procedure, except now what we're asking is, will this vendor have their last sale in the next month? And the reason we do this will be apparent in a second, but we consider this group as having a high likelihood of disappearing and mark them as red. We do the same thing, we expand a little bit the criteria and say, okay, will this vendor have their last sale in the next 3 months? And we consider this group as having a medium predicted likelihood of disappearing and color them yellow. We assemble 4 groups, those 2 groups that I mentioned, and also a group with the lowest reputation rating at a given week and a random selection. We track all these 4 vendors every week, and then we plot their average lifespan. And so what happens is that, indeed, the good news, again, is that if you can see in the graph, across most markets, if not all of them, the red and the yellow groups are consistently lower, means they have consistently shorter lifespans than the other 2 groups. And so this means that the public signals that the market gives you can roughly track whether a vendor will be pushed off the market or not. The problem is that, once again, if you look at the reputation bar and you look at the lowest rated reputations at each moment, it doesn't really give you a lot of good information. In fact, it's very similar, if not worse, than a random selection at each week of the market. Once again, if you want to see which features drive this selection of these groups in the red and yellow groups, you will have to read the paper. And I really encourage you to do so. Reputation systems can be a powerful tool to improve platform health. Part of their promise is that they can help platforms self-moderate through incentives. But they have become less useful over time. Even when evaluating reputation in an environment where it's crucial, like these marketplaces, we see that they have little impact on their own. And we hope that through this study, we motivate platforms to evaluate the usefulness of their reputation systems and provide users with signals that can actually help them make meaningful decisions about who to trust. eBay introduced their reputation system more than 20 years ago, and it has barely changed. I think there's room for improvement in how we can introduce new signals that are actually helpful for users. In conclusion, we introduced a new method to evaluate reputation systems in marketplaces. We demonstrate that reputation alone has little impact, but effective predictions rely on a variety of public signals. And we highlight the need to continuously evaluate signals and suggest how we can design more effective reputation systems. Thank you for listening to my talk. I'm excited to hear your questions. If we run out of time here, I still really want to hear your questions, so come find me later today, after the session, at the happy hour, tomorrow. Let's chat. Thank you very much, and opening the floor.